You've been dreaming of that perfect cruise vacation, the gorgeous views, the exciting excursions, and of course, the legendary all-you-can-eat buffets. But there's a dark side to those gleaming food displays that cruise lines are desperately trying to hide from you. Health violations so disturbing, they could turn your dream vacation into a nightmare of illness. 2025 is already the worst year for cruise ship illness outbreaks in over a decade, with thousands of passengers falling sick. While cruise lines blame passengers for poor hand hygiene, the truth is far more disturbing. Health inspectors have uncovered shocking violations behind those kitchen doors that put every passenger at risk, and the cruise industry is working overtime to keep these findings quiet. Today, I'm exposing the 10 most dangerous health violations found in cruise buffets this year that could make you seriously ill. These aren't minor infractions. They're the exact violations that led to documented outbreaks affecting hundreds of passengers. Whether you're planning your first cruise or your 15th, this insider information could literally save you from spending your vacation in the ship's medical center, or worse. Let's pull back the curtain on what's really happening in those cruise ship galleys and how you can protect yourself from becoming the next victim. Let's start with the most dangerous food safety violations that inspectors found on cruise ships this year. Temperature control failures that create the perfect breeding ground for bacteria. Violation number 1, the dangerous cold food holding temperatures. The Centers for Disease Control requires cold foods to be held at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below. That's not a suggestion, it's a critical safety threshold. Above that temperature, bacteria multiply at alarming rates, doubling every 20 minutes in what health inspectors call the danger zone. During surprise inspections in February 2025, CDC officials found cold foods on multiple cruise ships being held at temperatures between 55 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not just a few degrees off. It's a major violation that turns your seafood salad into a bacterial breeding ground. Let me put this in perspective. At proper temperatures below 41 degrees, bacteria grow slowly, if at all. But at 55 degrees, a single bacterium can multiply into more than 1,000 in just 3 hours. That's exactly what happened on the Royal Caribbean sailing in February 2025, when 127 passengers fell ill after eating cold shrimp cocktail that had been sitting out at 58 degrees for over 4 hours. The cruise line later claimed it was a minor temperature deviation, but CDC reports tell a different story. They found systematic failures in temperature monitoring, with food temperature logs showing falsified entries. Staff had been recording proper temperatures without actually checking the food. Here's how to protect yourself. Always look for condensation on the plates and serving dishes of cold foods. Properly chilled foods will show small beads of moisture around the edges. If the plate is completely dry or the food is room temperature to the touch, that's a red flag. Also, be wary of any cold seafood items that look dried out or have a sheen to them. These are visual clues that they've been sitting in the danger zone for too long. Violation number 2, the hot food temperature failure. Just as cold foods need to stay cold enough, hot foods must stay hot enough, specifically above 135 degrees Fahrenheit, according to CDC regulations. Below this temperature, harmful bacteria that may have survived cooking can multiply rapidly. In August 2020, inspectors found hot foods on several major cruise lines being held at just 110 to 115 degrees, dangerously below the safety threshold. At one buffet, the steam table had malfunctioned, but staff continued serving the food anyway. Infrared thermometers showed casseroles, soups, and meat dishes, all sitting in the prime temperature range for bacterial growth. What makes this violation particularly dangerous is that it creates a false sense of security. The food feels warm to the touch, so passengers assume it's safe. But that lukewarm temperature is exactly where bacteria like Clostridium perfringens, one of the most common causes of food poisoning, thrive. On a Carnival cruise in May 2025, over 200 passengers experienced severe abdominal cramps and diarrhea after eating from a buffet where lasagna and chicken dishes were held at inadequate temperatures for over 3 hours. The outbreak was so severe that the ship had to skip a port of call to deal with the medical emergency. Pro tip: you don't need a thermometer to check if hot food is being held at safe temperatures. Steam should be visibly rising from properly heated foods. If you don't see steam, That's your first warning sign. You can also hold your hand about 6 inches above the food. You should feel significant heat rising. Finally, when you take that first bite, hot foods should be too hot to immediately swallow without cooling in your mouth first. If you can immediately eat it without any cooling, it's likely below the safety threshold. Violation number 3, the cross-contamination catastrophe. This is perhaps the most disturbing violation because it happens right in front of passengers, yet most never recognize the danger. Cross-contamination occurs when bacteria from raw foods are transferred to ready-to-eat foods, and cruise ship inspectors found alarming examples throughout 2025. In June, CDC inspectors observed galley staff using the same cutting boards and knives for raw chicken and then fresh vegetables without proper cleaning in between. Even worse, on one luxury cruise line, raw chicken juices were seen dripping onto prepared salads in refrigerators where they were improperly stored. These aren't isolated incidents. The April E. coli outbreak on the Silver Ray that sickened 47 passengers was traced directly to this type of cross-contamination. Investigators found that the same utensils were being used to handle raw ground beef and then ready-to-eat fruits without proper sanitizing between uses. What's particularly alarming is how this violation extends to the buffet line itself. On multiple ships, inspectors documented staff using the same tongs to handle raw meat on the cooking line and then transfer cooked meat to serving platters. This completely defeats the purpose of cooking the food to kill bacteria in the first place. The sneaky part is that this type of contamination is invisible to passengers. You can't see, smell, or taste the bacteria being transferred. That perfectly fine-looking salad might have been prepped on a cutting board that minutes earlier had raw chicken on it. Pro tip: watch how often staff change utensils at cooking stations. At proper stations, you should see separate utensils for raw and cooked foods, often color-coded. Be wary of any cooking station where the chef uses the same tongs or spatula to handle raw meat and then the cooked product. Also, observe if staff change their gloves when moving between handling different food items. If you see the same gloved hands handling raw foods and then ready-to-eat items, that's a serious red flag. These first 3 violations are particularly dangerous because they create the perfect conditions for foodborne illnesses that can strike quickly and spread rapidly throughout the ship. And we're just getting started with the health hazards lurking in cruise buffets. Up next, I'll reveal the shocking hygiene violations that health inspectors found behind those clean buffet counters. Now let's dive into something even more disturbing: the hygiene violations that health inspectors uncovered on cruise ships this year. These aren't just minor oversights. They're serious breaches of basic food safety that directly led to illness outbreaks affecting hundreds of passengers. Violation number 4, the hand-washing failure. Hand-washing is the most fundamental food safety practice, yet it's routinely ignored on cruise ships. In March 2025, CDC inspectors conducted a surprise 3 a.m. inspection of the galley on a major cruise line. What they found was shocking. Out of 30 night shift workers handling food, only 9 were properly washing their hands between tasks. That's a 70% failure rate on the most basic hygiene practice. The problem isn't just lazy staff. Many ships had inadequate hand-washing facilities. On 3 different cruise lines, inspectors found sinks without hot water, soap dispensers that were empty, and no paper towels available. Without these essentials, even staff who want to wash their hands properly can't do so. This violation directly contributed to the massive norovirus outbreak in March 2025 that affected over 300 passengers on a Caribbean cruise. Investigators traced the outbreak to an infected crew member who wasn't washing their hands properly while preparing salads and sandwiches. That single failure led to hundreds of ruined vacations and an emergency docking in Puerto Rico. What's truly alarming is how cruise lines monitor hand washing, or rather, don't monitor it. Unlike land-based restaurants where managers can observe staff throughout shifts, cruise ship galleys often operate with minimal supervision, especially during overnight hours. The result is a culture where hand washing becomes optional when no one's watching. Pro tip: one of the best ways to gauge a ship's hygiene standards is to watch if staff change gloves between tasks. Glove changing doesn't replace hand washing. They should be doing both, but it's a visible indicator you can observe from the buffet line. And if you see the same gloved hands handling raw meat and then moving to ready-to-eat foods, that's a serious red flag. Also, take note of how often you see staff washing hands. In a properly run buffet, you should frequently see staff stepping away to wash hands between major tasks. Violation number 5. The buffet tong and serving utensil nightmare. Those serving utensils that everyone touches are among the germest items on the entire ship, yet they receive surprisingly little attention from cruise staff. CDC guidelines require tongs and serving spoons to be replaced or sanitized at least every 4 hours. But during 2025 inspections, multiple cruise lines were found using the same serving utensils for entire meal periods, sometimes 8 hours or more, without cleaning or replacement. Even more concerning is how these utensils are stored between uses. Properly, the food contact portion should be in the food with only the handle extended for grabbing. But on ship after ship, inspectors documented tongs and spoons laid entirely on top of food, or worse, with handles touching the food and the food contact portion exposed to every passing passenger. Think about what this means. On a ship with 3,000 passengers, a single pair of serving tongs might be touched by hundreds of people, many of whom haven't washed their hands properly. Those tongs become a perfect vehicle for transferring norovirus and other pathogens directly to the food. This exact scenario played out on a Princess Cruises sailing in April 2025, where epidemiologists traced a norovirus outbreak affecting 217 passengers to contaminated serving tongs at the breakfast buffet. Despite multiple passengers falling ill, the ship continued using the same serving utensils without proper sanitization. Pro tip: the best time to visit any cruise buffet is right when it opens. That's when food is freshest and serving utensils are cleanest. If you must eat during peak hours, watch for staff replacing utensils and time your approach accordingly. Also, consider using a napkin to grab serving utensils rather than touching them directly. It might look a bit fussy, but it creates a barrier between you and the hundreds of hands that touch that utensil before you. Violation number 6, the staff illness policy violations. Cruise ships are supposed to have strict policies preventing ill staff from working with food. The reality is shockingly different. In 2025, multiple cruise lines were cited for allowing visibly ill staff to continue working in food service areas. The pressure to work while sick comes from chronic understaffing. Cruise galleys operate with razor-thin staffing margins. When someone calls out sick, there often isn't anyone to cover their position. Rather than close a food station, managers pressure staff to work despite symptoms. This is exactly what happened during the July 2025 outbreak on Norwegian Cruise Line that sickened over 200 passengers. CDC investigators later determined that a galley worker with norovirus symptoms had continued working for 2 days before finally reporting to the medical center. By then, they had already contaminated hundreds of meals. What makes this violation particularly dangerous is that infected food handlers can contaminate large quantities of food very quickly. A single ill worker making sandwiches or handling salad ingredients can infect hundreds of passengers in a single shift. The cruise industry's response has been deeply inadequate. Rather than addressing the understaffing that creates pressure to work while sick, they've focused on superficial solutions like posting more signs reminding staff to report illness. Meanwhile, the same structural problems remain. Pro tip: pay close attention to staff behavior in buffet and food preparation areas. Signs of illness among food handlers include excessive sweating, frequent coughing or sniffling, or unusually flushed skin. If you observe a staff member who appears ill handling food, report it immediately to a supervisor or the ship's customer service desk. While it might feel uncomfortable to report someone, you could be preventing an outbreak that affects hundreds. These hygiene violations reveal a troubling pattern. Cruise lines often prioritize operational convenience over passenger safety. They cut corners on basic procedures that any land-based restaurant would be shut down for violating. And when outbreaks occur, they blame passenger behavior rather than examining their own failures. But we're still not done with the most shocking violations found on cruise ships this year. Up next, I'll reveal the disturbing sanitization failures that turn cruise buffets into breeding grounds for dangerous pathogens. Let's move on to some of the most overlooked yet dangerous problems on cruise ships: the sanitization and cleanliness violations that create perfect conditions for illness outbreaks. These are issues that passengers rarely notice, but that health inspectors immediately flag as severe hazards. Violation number 7, the buffet surface sanitization failure. According to CDC regulations, all food contact surfaces on cruise ships must be sanitized at least every 4 hours using a chemical solution of a specific strength. This isn't just bureaucratic red tape. It's a critical safety measure that prevents bacterial buildup on serving counters, trays, and utensil holders. In 2025, inspectors found alarming failures in this area across multiple cruise lines. On 7 different ships, the sanitizing solution being used was far too weak to be effective. Instead of the required 100 parts per million of chlorine, solutions were testing at just 10 to 15 parts per million. Essentially glorified water that gives a false sense of security. Even worse, many ships failed the sanitizer test strip checks entirely. When inspectors asked staff to demonstrate how they check sanitizer strength, many couldn't locate the test strips or didn't know how to use them. This means they had no idea if their sanitizing solution was effective at all. The March 2025 norovirus outbreak that affected 178 passengers on a Mediterranean cruise was directly linked to improperly sanitized buffet surfaces. Health investigators found that the same tables and serving stations had been wiped down with cloths dipped in sanitizing solution that was far too weak to kill norovirus. What makes this violation particularly dangerous is how invisible it is to passengers. Those surfaces might look clean and shiny, but without proper sanitization, they're harboring millions of bacteria and viruses from previous diners. One swipe of your hand across these surfaces, followed by touching your food or face, creates a direct transmission route for illness. Pro tip: the strategic seating location that minimizes your exposure is away from the highest traffic areas. Choose a table that's not right next to the buffet line or the main walkways. These areas get wiped down more frequently and generally receive more attention from cleaning staff. Also, use hand sanitizer after touching any common surfaces like serving station railings or drink dispensers, even if they appear clean. Violation number 8, the ice machine contamination crisis. Here's something that will make you think twice about that refreshing drink with ice. In 2025, inspectors found mold, slime, and biofilm growing inside ice machines on 9 different cruise ships. These weren't minor cosmetic issues. They were severe contaminations that directly affected the ice being served to passengers. Ice machines require regular cleaning and sanitizing to prevent biofilm growth. But on many ships, this maintenance was being skipped entirely. On one major cruise line, records showed ice machines that hadn't been properly cleaned for over 6 months. The most disturbing case occurred in January 2025, when fecal bacteria was found in ice samples taken from a premium cruise line. The contamination was traced to an ice machine where the water filter hadn't been changed in over a year, allowing bacteria to colonize the entire system. This violation is particularly concerning because ice is used throughout the ship, in drinks at every bar and restaurant, in the buffet drink dispensers, and even in food display areas. Contaminated ice becomes a ship-wide distribution system for bacteria and viruses. What makes ice machines such a problem area? They're often located in out-of-sight utility areas. They're difficult to clean properly, and the cool, moist environment is perfect for biofilm growth. Once contaminants establish themselves, they're extremely difficult to eliminate without completely disassembling the machine. Pro tip: the safest way to consume ice on a cruise ship is to limit it to venues where you can see staff handling it directly, such as bars where bartenders use ice scoops rather than automatic dispensers. Be particularly wary of self-serve ice machines in hallways or buffet areas. These often receive the least attention from cleaning staff, and whenever possible, request drinks without ice, especially early in your cruise before you've had a chance to gauge the ship's overall cleanliness standards. Violation number 9, the sneeze guard deception. Sneeze guards are those clear plastic or glass shields that are supposed to protect buffet food from respiratory droplets. They're not just there for show, they're required by health regulations and must be of a specific design and height to be effective. Throughout 2025, inspectors found serious violations related to sneeze guards across multiple cruise lines. Some ships had guards that were too small or positioned too high to provide actual protection. Others had removed portions of the guards during busy periods to allow faster access to food, completely defeating their purpose. The May 2025 violation, where a major cruise line had guards that covered only half of each food tray, was particularly concerning. This design allowed respiratory droplets to easily reach food on the exposed portion of each tray, creating a direct transmission route for norovirus and other pathogens. There's a direct correlation between inadequate sneeze guard protection and norovirus transmission. When CDC investigators analyzed outbreak patterns across multiple ships, they found that serving stations with inadequate guards had significantly higher contamination rates than properly protected stations. This violation illustrates a troubling pattern in the cruise industry. Safety features are often compromised for convenience or aesthetics. Smaller, partial, or removable sneeze guards might look better or allow faster service, but they fundamentally fail at their primary purpose: protecting food from contamination. Pro tip: how do you identify inadequate sneeze guard protection? Look for complete coverage over the entire food display. Proper guards should make it impossible for someone's face to be directly over any exposed food. If you can lean over and have your face above the food, the guard is inadequate. When you encounter serving stations with questionable protection, opt for foods from covered containers or foods that require utensils rather than finger foods that might have been exposed to respiratory droplets. These sanitization and cleanliness violations create invisible hazards throughout cruise buffets. While the food itself might look appetizing, the conditions under which it's being served could be putting your health at serious risk. And we're still not done with the most disturbing findings from 2025 inspections. Up next, I'll reveal the pest control violations that most passengers never see, but that health inspectors find all too frequently. Finally, let's uncover what might be the most disturbing violations of all: the pest control issues and reporting failures that cruise lines work hardest to hide from passengers. These aren't just aesthetic issues. They represent serious health hazards that can directly impact food safety. Violation number 10, the pest control and cockroach cover-up. In April 2025, CDC inspectors conducted surprise overnight inspections on multiple cruise ships and found what passengers never see in the daylight: live cockroach infestations in food storage and preparation areas. On one major cruise line, inspectors documented over 30 live cockroaches in a single dry storage area where breakfast cereals and breads were kept. What makes this discovery particularly alarming is that cockroaches are known carriers of numerous pathogens, including Salmonella and E. coli. When these pests travel across food surfaces and storage areas, they leave behind bacteria that can easily contaminate exposed foods. That box of cereal at the breakfast buffet might look perfectly fine, but if it's been stored in an infested area, it could be carrying dangerous pathogens. The cruise industry has a systematic approach to hiding these problems. Pest control activities are almost exclusively scheduled for nighttime hours when passengers are asleep, and when ships know inspections are coming, they conduct emergency deep cleaning of problem areas, creating an artificial and temporary level of cleanliness that doesn't reflect day-to-day conditions. The impossible challenge of eliminating pests once they're established on ships is a critical issue. Unlike land-based restaurants that can shut down for comprehensive pest treatment, cruise ships are almost constantly in operation. Treatments must be done piecemeal, often using less effective methods to avoid chemical exposure to passengers. The result is a never-ending battle where pests are controlled but rarely eliminated. In March 2025, passengers on a Caribbean cruise documented cockroaches at the midnight buffet, taking photos that later went viral on social media. The cruise line responded by claiming it was an isolated incident, but inspection records revealed a long-standing infestation that had been cited on multiple previous inspections. Pro tip: warning signs of pest problems to watch for include small dark specks near food serving areas, cockroach droppings, tiny holes in food packaging, or staff who seem overly concerned with quickly cleaning up even minor food spills. Be especially vigilant at late-night buffets when lighting is dimmer and pests are more likely to be active. If you do spot pests of any kind, report it immediately to both ship staff and to the CDC's vessel sanitation program after your cruise. Your report could trigger an inspection that forces meaningful changes. Beyond these specific violations, there's an even deeper problem: the failure of cruise lines to properly report and address health hazards when they are discovered. Throughout 2025, CDC investigations revealed a pattern of cruise ships failing to properly document food safety issues, sanitizer strength tests, and staff illness incidents. This lack of transparency isn't just a paperwork problem. It creates a culture where problems are hidden rather than solved. On several ships, inspectors found evidence that temperature logs had been falsified, with staff recording proper temperatures without actually checking the food. This systematic deception makes it impossible to identify and address real safety issues. The consequences of these failures can be seen in the record number of illness outbreaks in 2025. So far this year, the CDC has documented 19 separate gastrointestinal illness outbreaks on cruise ships, the highest number in over a decade. These outbreaks affected more than 2,600 passengers and crew, turning dream vacations into nightmares of illness. Even more concerning is how cruise lines respond to these outbreaks. Rather than acknowledging systemic problems, they typically blame passengers for poor hand hygiene while downplaying their own responsibility. This deflection strategy protects their reputation, but does nothing to address the underlying safety issues. So what can you do to protect yourself on your next cruise? Let's recap the critical safety steps every passenger should take. First, timing is everything. Eat at buffets right when they open, when food is freshest and surfaces are cleanest. Avoid peak periods when food may have been sitting out for hours and staff are too overwhelmed to maintain proper safety standards. Second, be strategic about what you eat. Items that are cooked to order in front of you are generally safer than pre-prepared foods sitting in buffet trays. Avoid cold seafood items, room temperature dairy products, and any hot foods that don't have steam rising from them. Third, sanitize constantly. Bring your own hand sanitizer and use it before eating, after touching serving utensils, and after contact with high-touch surfaces like elevator buttons and railings. While sanitizer isn't perfect, it adds an important layer of protection. Fourth, know when to speak up. If you see serious safety violations like visibly ill staff handling food, improper sneeze guards, or pests in dining areas, report it immediately to both ship management and to the CDC's vessel sanitation program. Your vigilance could prevent others from getting sick. Finally, choose your cruise line carefully. Before booking, check the CDC's Vessel Sanitation Program website for inspection scores and recent outbreaks. Avoid ships with scores below 95 or those with repeated violations of the same safety issues, as this suggests systematic problems rather than isolated incidents. Remember, cruise lines with the best food safety records in 2025 include Disney Cruise Line, which hasn't had a single outbreak this year, and Viking Ocean Cruises, which consistently scores above 98 on CDC inspections. Your choice of cruise line can significantly impact your risk of encountering these dangerous violations. The cruise industry doesn't want you to know about these health violations because they shatter the carefully crafted image of luxury and safety that their marketing promotes. But as a passenger, you have the right to know what's happening behind those kitchen doors and how it might affect your health. By being informed and vigilant, you can still enjoy all the fun and relaxation of a cruise vacation without falling victim to preventable foodborne illness. The buffet doesn't have to be a danger zone if you know what to look for and how to protect yourself. If you found this information valuable, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more travel safety content. And comment "food safety first" below so I can personally thank you for prioritizing your health on vacation. Stay tuned for my upcoming video about 5 cruise lines with the best food safety records in 2025, where I'll highlight the companies that are getting it right and keeping their passengers safe. Until then, safe travels and even safer eating.